Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United news and transfer news, and it's a busy morning again. Transfer deadline set for Sancho, which we're going to talk in a minute, but literally in the last few minutes we've had direct quotes from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Also, remember we were speaking about Harry Winks last night. I can tell you further to those Harry Winks discussions, which we'll talk about in a few minutes' time, the priority for Manchester United is very much a midfielder, which I think is really good news. So we'll see about that again. It's a little bit like Sancho and whether he'll sign before the Euros. I'm not totally convinced. But apparently a midfielder is a priority for Manchester United. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. I want to talk about the Sancho deadline, but let's talk about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's quotes that have literally just come out. It's from TV2, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it might be a Norwegian TV station, but correct me if I'm wrong on that. These are direct quotes from Ole. I've gone all Norwegian. He says, of course something will happen in the transfer window. The world has become very different in the last 15 to 16 months, but we have to make some moves on the transfer window. Also with the team, we are second best, too far behind to threaten those who won. We have to strengthen ourselves. So he's spot on with that. He says it's never possible to sit back in football. You're constantly looking for reinforcements. Football is dynamic, so unexpected things can happen, such as injuries, illness, something familiar, or that someone wants to move. You have to take everything into consideration and reflection. I will never sit down and think now the team is the way I want it to be, because you always see some players or other teams doing something that you want. So there you go. He's talking openly about transfers then. But interestingly, then wanders into an area I don't think he needs to wander into. It's up to you. He says, I'm very happy about Cavani's contract extension, but that does not mean that I'm not looking for someone who can challenge or learn from him. So, I mean, I don't agree with that. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I don't agree with that. He's talking about happy that Cavani's staying, but doesn't mean that he's not looking for another striker. And I'm just like, look, I agree with Sancho. He's not a striker. But another striker, you need a bloody midfielder, Ollie. I'm telling you now. If you think, I'm telling you now, Ollie. I'm telling you now. You don't need a striker. You need a bloody midfielder. You can buy all the strikers in the world. You can get Ronaldo, you can get Lewandowski, you can get Haaland, but it doesn't matter. One of the big learning curves of last season was that we didn't create enough chances for our strikers until Pogba became more advanced. So there's the lesson. You know, you take Pogba out your midfield to create more chances, but then you leave your midfield weak. So there's a lesson there. You need a midfielder because you need two Paul Pogbas basically. You need Pogba in the midfield, and you put Pogba in the midfield. You bring Jadon Sancho in, but then Pogba needs a midfielder next to him who can hold the midfield, which used to be Matic, which we don't have. For me, I keep saying it, that this transfer window will be deemed a success or a failure on the basis of whether we bring a centre defensive midfielder in, not on whether we bring another striker in. I love this channel so much. I'm up at 2:20 a.m. here in Long Beach, California. Man United for life, says Jose. Big up, Jose. I bet the weather's lovely in Long Beach, California. It's quite nice here in Solihull, Birmingham, but I'd rather be in Long Beach, California. Mark, forget signing Sancho or the Euros. Me calling in on your next call in will be bigger, says Zane Miassi. Yeah, you missed it last night, Zane. You were wanted, but you weren't available, which was sad. And also, just finally on Solskjaer, before we talk about this deadline for Sancho, Solskjaer, in what is an apparent response to a question about Pogba's future, says, we want the best players here, and the club knows what I want. I do not know how the dialogue goes, but if we are to fight for the best trophies, we must have the best players. And I don't think that is conclusive one way or another in relation to Paul Pogba. I just think that Solskjaer is stating the obvious, the future of Paul Pogba isn't set, but Ole Gunnar Solskjaer wants him to stay. And I'm not going to dwell on Paul Pogba on this show this morning. The reality is there will be some United fans that don't want Paul Pogba to stay, but for me, I want Pogba to stay. He's a fantastic player. Do I think he's going to stay? No, I don't. So it'll be a pleasant surprise if he does. Anyway, that's Ollie's updates. Wants another striker apparently, but does want reinforcements, which is positive. There is an update on Sancho from Jan Argefjortoft. We've had Jan on the show in the past, and he has basically said that the deadline for a Sancho deal from Dortmund is the 23rd of July, which I don't dispute. And if we haven't signed Sancho by the 23rd of July, I tell you what, I don't blame Dortmund for saying up yours, because the 23rd of July feels like 2023, not 23rd of July. I mean, come on. If we can't get this deal done by the 23rd of July, we don't deserve to get Jadon Sancho. So that transfer deadline, I think, is when Dortmund are back for pre-season training, which is fine and it's fair enough. It gives us lots and lots and lots of time to do it. I suppose one of the big questions is, will we get this deal done before the Euros? I tweeted this morning. Can't see it happening today. Can't see it happening tomorrow. England are playing tomorrow. They'll be prepping today. That doesn't mean that you can't announce something, but it's very unlikely. I think if we are to announce this before the Euros, it has to be announced before Wednesday, because England's first game in the Euros starts a week on Sunday. That's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, which will be pivotal games for Southgate and England, preparing for that game against Croatia, I think, is the first game. So if this is going to get announced, Southgate will want minimal distraction, and it would have to be Monday, Tuesday. There seems to be a lot of people excited that this deal can happen before the Euros. I've never been excited by it. I mean, I am excited by it, but I've never believed the excitement around it. So, look, I'm not saying it's not going to happen. There are still people saying, yeah, it can happen before the Euros. United want it to happen before the Euros. My belief is that if this deal got announced before the Euros, it would be pending medical anyway, because they'd want him to hold... Man United want him to hold the shirt up. So I don't see it happening. Trippier won't happen before the Euros, by the way, either. So I don't think United are going to get anything done before the Euros. But remember what Romano said on Thursday. Big update in the next few days. And we're into that period where he could be saying something at any point. So, look, I think Sancho to United will happen. I think the 23rd of July is a deadline that's ridiculously far away. I think it'll happen way before then. When it's going to happen, we're just going to have to wait and see. But Manchester Evening News this morning also saying unlikely that any deals are done before the Euros for Manchester United, with most players they're looking at involved in the Euros. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that. But just quickly, it feeds into like this before I talk about Harry Winks and a couple. I really want to talk about Romero. Why has nobody mentioned Romero yesterday? I'm disgusted in us as a community. And if I missed it, I put my hands up. I apologise. But I completely missed Romero being released on a free yesterday. And I think that's a huge story. Can I just say, Romero being late, I knew he was going to leave. He wanted to go. The rumour was he wanted to go to Everton last summer in August for 4 million. And United said no, for 4 million quid in our pocket. And we said no. But he wanted to go and he fell out with United. And he's not played a game in a year, right? This is a disgrace. We let him go for free. He won a trophy with us. Loads of people love Romero. I saw people yesterday saying, I can't believe we're going to go from Romero and De Gea to Heaton and Henderson, which I think is a fair point. But what I cannot believe is that Romero was really well liked by fans. No goodbye. We've not seen him in a year. I think it's disgusting behaviour by the club. And look, yesterday, Gary Neville's spoken about this. I'll talk about that in a moment. Joel Glazer comes out and talks absolute shite about wanting the club to be successful, wanting to work with the fans. On the same day that we let Sergio Romero just go for free, we never got to say goodbye to him. He may as well have not been here for a year. He wanted to go in August. We wouldn't let it happen because we couldn't get enough money, apparently. 4 million quid was apparently the offer and we wanted more. A year later, he goes for nothing, but we've paid him 4 million in wages. Glazer-nomics. I mean, how ridiculous is that from a business point of view? We wouldn't let him go last August for around 4 million quid. We keep him at the club for a year, pay his wages, don't use him and pay wages of 4 million over a year. I mean, that is just why we fail. Like, we could have had 4 million. We've had a swing of 8 million because we missed out on the 4 million and we've paid 4 million. So that's 8 million that's cost us over a year by not taking the fee and then, having to pay him wages as well. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But the worst point about it all is Romero's gone. We're negotiating with Lee Grant and Juan Mata and Romero is gone. And it's like, I just don't understand this club. Unbelievable behaviour. Disgusting behaviour. Again. With a player that's actually done something for this football club in the last few years. Reminds me of Herrera being allowed to walk out the door. But Romero, disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. On the same day that Joel Glazer does a bloody meeting selling shit about, we're doing this, that and the other. This is why I don't trust them. Because on the very same day he's telling all these great stories about what's going to happen, we're treating Romero like that and basically burning 4 million quid. 4 million quid! All the work you do for charity, that 4 million quid could have gone to something like the NHS or, books for kids or something like that. Give it to Rashford for the stuff he's doing. 4 million quid down the drain on a player that wanted to go a year ago. What a waste of money. What an absolute waste of money. Not to mention people like Phil Jones who've earned 4 million quid for doing nothing. We've probably paid over £10 million in wages over the last year for players who haven't played a minute for United. Easily, when you think about the subsidised players on loan, we've played over £10 million a year in wages to people who've never kicked a ball for United. Unbelievable waste of money. And yet Woodward's allowed to go with thanks very much. Bring in another Pratt. You know, just what a terribly bad run football club. And what an appalling way to treat a keeper that actually won us our last major trophy. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I'm telling you, it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But Gary Neville has spoken about the fan forum. A lot of what he said is in agreement with yourself. He said, look, at the end of the day, they should have made a commitment to not take any dividends for 5 years to help the club, you know, use the dividend money towards stadium in introductions. They should have put a plan out of what their stadium plans actually are instead of just we're gonna, you know, because basically what they've said is we're gonna invest in the stadium. Well, what's your plan for the stadium? You could have had pictures and all sorts. Didn't bring that. They could have committed a certain amount of money for the next 5 years to invest in players. They didn't do that. They just said we were going to invest. And the share scheme, what is the share scheme? And I think Gary Neville's absolutely spot on, and so are you all last night. Just talking about that fan forum before we talk about Harry Winks. You're absolutely spot on. They basically have done the traditional con job. When people aren't happy with something, you know, if you live in a block of flats, right? You know, private flats or, you know, not private flat, whatever. You live in a block of flats, right? And the toilets are crap, the lift keeps breaking down. So you have a meeting with the manager of the flats, right? And they turn up and everyone's angry and they say, I'm going to fix the lift and we're going to get the toilets cleaned. When are you going to do that then? Well, we're going to do it and we will fix the lift. Bye. And that's a little bit like what the Glazers did yesterday. We are going to do a share scheme. What's the details? We are going to invest in the team. By how much? And we are going to invest in structuring the club and the stadium. How? What's your plan? The debt's fine. Dividends are fine. I mean, I agree with Gary Neville. I agree with all of you. I do not trust them. I do not believe what they're talking about because, again, they failed to provide any detail. And it's almost as if we have become the pauper and they are the boss. And I know they are the boss, and I know we are not the boss as fans of United, but it's almost like they treated us like that yesterday. Yeah, we are going to do that, but we're not going to tell you what we're doing. And yet, a month ago, they were on their knees in the shit, and now they're up above again going, yeah, we are going to do that, but we're not going to tell you what we're going to do. I wonder why we keep buying young talent and benching them. The squad has no depth, and we keep buying makeshift retirees to save our skin, says Steve Vivanch. How's it going, Mark? Have we got Sancho yet? No, Dylan, we have not. Why is no one talking about the fact Joel Glazer cares so much he couldn't be bothered to even show up in person? Zoom call, bunch of bullshit, says Chris. And I wonder, that's that. I'm not feeling that positive around this whole Glazer thing at the moment. I actually do think we've had the wool pulled over our eyes, and I think it's a con job to buy time to put the fire out of the Glazers to get closer to that new shirt deal, to announce Jadon Sancho and have record sales. I just genuinely think they are playing the long game to put the fire out of the Glazer out campaign and get back to where they were a year ago, where they can just buy next to nothing, invest in next to nothing, keep taking. They've basically said as well, in a meeting with fans, they've basically said the debt is fine and dividends are fine. You know, he's actually turned up to a meeting and said that with his chest. Dividends are fine and debt is fine. So if he's got the balls to say that in a fan forum when fans are angry, do you really want to take anything else he said with any trust? Anyway, let's talk about Harry Winks. Harry Winks, if you were on the show last night, I got a message literally towards the last few minutes of the Friday night show saying that this is 100% legitimate, that Manchester United have been in discussions for Spurs for Harry Winks. Obviously, it hit the Stretty News website as well at roughly the same time. And what I was also told as I went off air is that Manchester United are prioritising a centre defensive midfield. Well, this is great. This is good news. I'm very happy about this. We do need to sign a centre defensive midfielder. Now, should it be Harry Winks is the thing that I want to talk about this morning, because if this is legitimate about Harry Winks, I think you need to assess it and look at it. Mark, I remember you getting info saying we will sign a surprise player. If it's Winks, then we are surprised. He better than the two we have. We are adding inconsistent player to an inconsistent team, says Amit. Well, very well timed super chat. Thank you for the super chat there, Amit. I think that on reflection, and I have thought about it because I was sort of hit with it live on the show last night. So I was sort of like, I've got to go with what I remember I've said about Harry Winks. And I do remember saying 18 months ago that I really did like Harry Winks. 18 months later, his career is stalled. He's better than Fred and he's better than McTominay in the fact that he can play as a holding midfielder. Some people think Harry Winks is a box-to-box player. I've never envisaged him as a box-to-box player. He's always as a midfield two. He always takes the ball off the back four. So Harry Winks would be in the mould of the sort of player that we need. But what I've got to say about this is, and a lot of people are saying it in the live comments, I don't mind Harry Winks, and it could be one of those signings that you make and he becomes great. But I don't think he's particularly good at tackling. I think he reads the game quite well. I think he's taking the ball off the back four and passing it forward is better than McTominay and Fred. And that would be a massive improvement. And I said this a few weeks ago. If you brought Jorginho or Alan from Everton to Man United, we would improve as a team straight away because we don't have the player who takes the ball off the back four and passes the ball to players quickly. We don't have that. Fred and McTominay can't do it. So he would improve us there. But what I would say, and what Raz has said there, is you can get Basuma for the same price. Cup Miners, Zakaria, Samari, who's already gone to Leicester, Basuma. There's 4 players there that are better than Harry Winks for the same price. And I would have to ask the question again. If we buy Trippier, Winks, Sancho, and, I don't know who the centre-back's going to be, but imagine it was bloody Ben White. We've bought 4 English players. This has been something that's overshadowed Solskjaer for the last time that he's been here. This Brexit FC thing has been here. And I remember Solskjaer making a comment probably 2 or 3 years ago, right at the start, about British players. He seems to have an obsession with British players. But it's almost like he learned from Sir Alex Ferguson but didn't listen, because watch The United Way. Watch Sir Alex Ferguson's documentary. At no point is Sir Alex Ferguson trying to build a British side. In fact, quite to the contrary. He always had foreign players who were the key players in that team. If you think about Schmeichel, Cantona, Ronaldo, Van Nistelrooy, I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Yap Stam, there's loads. There's absolutely loads. Vidic. You don't need British players. It's almost like Ollie's playing in the early 70s, like where there wasn't really any foreigners at Manchester United. In relation to foreigners, for me, would be non-Ireland and British players. But football, the world is diverse. Football is diverse. Portuguese players, French players, Spanish players, Brazilian players. They come into the Premier League and it's not a big thing anymore. It's not like, oh my God, will they adapt to the weather? Will they like beans on toast? Will they like driving a Ford, which is an American car? I don't get it. I don't get it. And that would be the thing about Harry Winks. I think he's a good player, and he's a player that I personally do quite like. But there's probably 10 players for the same price who look better than him. So I would query why we're looking at him. And for me, it just feels like, oh, he's English. He's an English player and he's cheap. He's a cheap Declan Rice. And I'm like, that's. We've got to scout better than that. And we have. Palestri's from Uruguay. Diallo's come in from Italy. Van der Beek's come in from Holland. All right, we haven't used him. We have got the scouts around the world. So why would you go for Harry Winks? So I don't think we'll go for Harry Winks. But look, it's 100% legit that we're looking at it. So we'll have to wait and see. But to me, it just feels like a British signing. I mean, if Harry Winks was, let's imagine Harry Winks was available for 25 million and he was playing in the Spanish league for Getafe and he was Uruguayan, would we go for him? I don't think that we would. I think this is because he's English and he plays in the Premier League. Oh, he'll do. Better scouting needed in those sort of decisions. But I am encouraged that we're looking for a midfielder. And if we get Harry Winks, then look, we get Harry Winks, don't we? I mean, there are aspects to his game that I liked 18 months ago. I'd worry about where that aspect has gone before. But of course, he does. One of the main things about Harry Winks that everybody is missing, and you've got to take account of this as to why Ollie would want to buy him. It's not just because he's British. He's also got the perfect name. Carricky. We got Winksy. Carricky will tell you what to do. Fletchy, Winksy, Carricky, Scotty, Freddie, Pogba, Donny, Winksy. Great. And that's, probably a reason as well. I told you, Basuma does not work. And call him Busy, Ollie. Busy. We've got Busy in the midfield. Ollie would love Basuma. If he knew that nickname, he would love it. He's just not thought it through. Ollie would smile on every press conference when he called Basuma busy. Got busy in the midfield, being busy. He'd love it. He's just not. Somebody needs to tell Ollie if he signs Basuma, he can call him busy. And he's a midfielder. So he's a busy midfielder. He'd love it. He'd love the joke. And it's got a Y on the end. Somebody needs to get hold of Ollie and say, if you buy Basuma, he's the same price as Harry Winks, more or less, and you can call him busy. And he's a CDM. Get the joke. He's a busy CDM. Busy. Oh, the joke. You'll be able to tell it 40 times a season on the press conferences. 80 if you do it on the press conferences and post-match interviews. So, yeah, that'd be a really good one, I think. But somebody says, clip this and repost and let's go viral with it, says Anish. I'm not sure it'll go viral, but you're more than welcome to clip it. Wonderful to hear. And yes, the weather is beautiful, but I'm doing great thanks to the weekend. Susan's having a little chat with George Kyle there. Big up to the mods. I loved the call-in last night, by the way. If you didn't see the show last night, well worth a watch. The call-in was back. It was a good old laugh, and it was nice to have. Ollie too far behind. Deadline. Winks. Comprehend. Gary Neville. Okay, there was something else I wanted to bring in just before I go into the chat. I forget what it is. Let's have a look. So, yes, deadline for Sancho, 23rd of July, but I don't think we need to worry about that one too much. I don't really want to bring this in, but somebody did just mention it. Apparently, Tielemans is wanted by Liverpool. Now, I've got to say this. If Tielemans is a viable option for Liverpool, why are Man United not looking at Tielemans? Because they're going to get to... Liverpool don't ever get their trousers pulled down on transfers. I'll guarantee you now, Liverpool will get Tielemans for 50 million. Now, he's perfect for what United need. Perfect for what United need in that midfield. And people say, well, he can't play holding midfield because Ndidi does it. But he's still miles better than Fred and McTominay. And, you know, he massively will improve Liverpool. So I think Tielemans is an interesting one. That's not what I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about the managerial merry-go-round. So Conte is no longer going to Spurs, apparently. This was breaking news last night. So Conte is available, but Conte wants a job. They're now talking that Conte will go to PSG, which would mean Pochettino back to Spurs. But the interesting thing about that is that Zidane won't have a job, which means Zidane is waiting for a job, which means if Ollie starts the season badly, Zidane could get the job. But I don't think that, I was thinking about this last night, and I'm probably going to upset the Ollie outers here. I believe Ollie should get next season, and he's going to get his new contract. I don't know when they're going to announce that. They need to wait for the perfect moment, I suppose. But if he gets Sancho and he gets a centre back and he gets a CDM, can you see United failing? I can't see how you'd fail with those three players. So I don't think Ollie's going anywhere anytime in the next year if we get those players. If he does get those players, do you think the club would sack him having spent £80 million on Sancho? I don't know. I just can't see them removing Solskjaer at any point, anytime soon. And whether that's competence by the board or incompetence by the board, I think that I've got to be honest. I woke up this morning, I looked at those quotes again, I saw what Gary Neville had to say, I totally agreed with it. Basically, what all you lot had been saying last night, and I just do not have any confidence in this board. I think they're a joke. I think they're an absolute joke. And coming after the day of the fan forum that was meant to potentially give you some positivity, I'm so appalled with myself that I didn't see that the club had released Romero. And I saw it as I went to bed last night. I don't know how I'd missed it. So Romero gets released at a cost of $4 million for not kicking a ball when he wanted to go last year. We've paid him $4 million over a year, not used him, treated him like shit. Appalling behaviour by the football club, and it just gets buried under a fan forum bloody bullshit story, you know. Ronaldo at United means that we have a perfect mentor for Sancho, says Manula. I mean, maybe that's the forward Ollie's talking about. Mark, if you were to play now as a CDM, then you would have a perfect name as well, Bridgie, between defence and attack. Just joking. Be careful, Amit. Be careful. Ollie might watch. I might have my phone's ringing. No, I'm not. Under no circumstances am I being Bridgie in your midfield, Ollie. Not in a million years. Why? I'd love to play for Manchester United, but I'd rather wipe my arse with sandpaper than play next to Fred or McTominay. You know, my Who Scored ratings not getting ruined by them. Bye. No, but I would in my prime. in my dreams. Bridgie is the bridge between Harry and Bruno-y. What does he call? Why? What does Ollie call Bruno? He just calls him Bruno. He must hate that. What? How do I get a Y in that? I'm totally Ollie in for at least a season. Hope you can prove people wrong, says Chris Shields. Good to hear. And also, we should get Troy Parrott. Fernandi. Bruno-y. Bruni. Sounds like Rooney. He doesn't. He calls Bruno, doesn't he? Let's be honest. He does call Bruno, as we know. Okay. Bruno-y Fernandez-y, says... pinned by the United stand. And make sure you smash a like on the video, by the way, and subscribe, bottom right hand corner. The show last night was absolutely fantastic. So to summarise, Romero was one of the players who let go. I mean, look, just very quickly on that, I thought I felt like throwing up last night. I read that Romero had been released. Also, just a big shout out, a couple of Pugmo's gone from the youth setup. We brought him in a few years ago from Spain. Apparently he was going to the next big thing. He's gone. Alua Traore. I always thought he had a lot of potential. Remember, we bought him in at 16. I think we got him from... He'd been released by PSG. We brought him to United. He's been on loan in the French second league this season. We've released him as well, which I think is... But that's the thing with younger players. You never know with younger players what's going to happen with younger players. Which is why I always say, until they hit the first team, I'm not going to talk about it massively. Like, I think Charlie McNeil is going to be a fantastic striker of the future. But, you know, until he plays in the first team, you just don't know. It's the same with Shoretire. It's the same with Hannibal. It's the same with Hugworth. It's the same with loads and loads of young players that we've got coming through. There might be a player that no one's really talking about in the youth team who just goes and plays men's football and takes to it like a duck to water. So, you know, you just never know. But I did think with that Traore, he might be a good player. But, you know, we've released him as well. But in the same article, they're talking about negotiating with Juan Mata and Lee Grant. And I'm sorry, I love Juan Mata, but as a football club, I'm very pissed off again. Like, Romero treatment was a disgrace. Giving Juan Mata a new contract is a farce. I mean, who would do that in their right mind? And look, people can say, oh, I love Mata, you're being really unfair. I will use our rivals here. Pep Guardiola is considering letting Fernandinho go, who's played a key part in their season. He's letting Aguero go to go and play up front for Barcelona. And yet we're keeping Juan Mata, who wouldn't be able to get in a Southampton team at the moment. And we're thinking about giving him a new contract. How are we stepping forward as a football club to close a gap on teams like Man City when we're keeping players Pep wouldn't even use to put the cones out at training? Like, Pep's being ruthless, removing players that would walk straight into our first team. Fernandinho and Aguero would play first team football for United. Pep's letting them go. And we're giving new contracts to players that are nowhere near good enough, who also will sit on our bench for most of the season, blocking people like Hannibal, people like Diallo getting on the bench. And we'll pay 140 grand a week to them to do it. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And this is the issue that we've got at United. And the Glazers, if they weren't so full of bullshit, they would look at this. But this is why I know the Glazers don't really mean what they're on about. Because they talk about investment, they talk about restructuring the stadium, etc. But if they had a brain, and they do, they would look at the waste of that money and they would remove people like Ed Woodward. They would remove people like Matt Judge. They would remove people like Solskjaer's coaches, because they would look at things and go, last season, we paid, 140 grand a week is 280 grand a fortnight. It's over $500,000 a month. $500,000 a month is 1 million every 2 months. So it's 6 million a year that Juan Mata gets. £6 million a year Juan Mata is rumoured to get. How many minutes did he play last season for 6 million a year? If I was Joel Glazer, I'd be like, we've just paid a player £6 million a year. He can go this summer. You've hardly used him in the last 2 years, and you want to give him a new deal. Fuck off. Like, get stuffed. And I'm not, literally get stuffed. Romero, you've kept him for a year and not used him on 4 million a year. Phil Jones has been paid 4 million a year and he's injured again. I'm telling you now, get him off the wage bill. Just get rid of them. But no, give him a new deal. And this is where, from top to bottom, that club is a joke. Whether it's defending corners, whether it's giving new contracts out, whether it's appointing bankers instead of proper football people, whether it's pulling the wool over the fans' eyes to rip them off for more money, top to bottom, that club is a joke. And until they start appointing people in that football, I would rather we didn't spend half the money we're going to spend this summer and actually sacked a load of people within that club. Because that, to me, would be a bigger... I think a centre defensive midfielder is really important for United this summer. But if we didn't buy a centre defensive midfielder, but we sacked a couple of first team coaches, we brought in a new CEO, we brought a proper director of footballer in, and we sacked a few people and brought competent people in, I would go, that is proper reform and restructuring in that football club. But it isn't. This is why I really am dubious and do not believe what was said in that fan forum yesterday. Because everybody who's been here for the last 8 years and caused this chaos is still going to be here this summer. They don't change anything inside the club, and yet they tell you these lies that things are going to change. The incompetence is still there. It's like the worst restaurant in your area, right? It's got a terrible reputation for horrible food. People walk in there and healthy and they walk out shitting themselves because the food's that bad. That's what United's a bit like. But all they've done is they've not changed anything. They've not changed the restaurant. They've not cleaned it. They've not changed the chef. They've not changed the suppliers. All they've done is change the name and the menu. But everything's the same. Oh, we've listened to you. We've just rebadged everything. Everything's the same, really. But, people don't necessarily want to delve that deep, do they? Oh, they said they're going to make some changes. You know as well as I do that football club from top to bottom is infected with jobs for the boys, mates rates and incompetence. And, every job I've ever had, if somebody underperforms for a few years, they don't get the chance to go, oh, I'm going to start doing it properly now. They're out the door and you bring somebody in to do it properly. Any jobs like that. Mark, I would never want to see you on the United pitch with the United jersey, but I would like to see you as our director of football, says AJ Flores. Yeah, I'm past it now. And Mark, any chance for Kimmich to United, says Tariq. You know what? Tariq, it must be a mind thing. I actually had a dream last night. That Ole Gunnar Solskjaer said, I want Jadon Sancho and I want Kimmich. And that actually just, sometimes you think, oh, deja vu. I actually heard Ole say that he wants Kimmich this summer. We're never getting Kimmich, but I'm just saying I had a dream last night that Ole was like, I want Kimmich. I want Karaki. I want Kimmich. Kimmichi. I want Kimmich, but no, it was definitely a dream. There's nothing to it. Anyway, enjoyed the show this morning. I hope you did as well. Please smash a like on the video. Make sure you subscribe, bottom right-hand corner, and you've got your notifications on. You never know. We're awaiting Romano to say something, so it could happen at any point. We will be live at 8 o'clock, of course, as ever. Have a fantastic day. It's a very nice day in the UK. Last sort of weekend of no real football before the Euros kicks off. So enjoy it, and I'll speak to you all a little bit later. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Speak to you all in a bit.